Thank you everyone for joining us for Launch a Hyperlocal part number 3. This is really an effort to put together the most comprehensive guide on launching a hyperlocal and really covering the 3 key areas of launching. So on Monday, we discussed planning. So kind of taking a step back and putting some thought into what you're doing and what you want to achieve is incredibly helpful. Thinking about what it is that you want to offer to your readers, what it is that you want to offer to your advertisers, your goals. The goals like, how much money do I need to make? How much money do I need to make this a viable option for me? And how am I going to make that money? And that's obviously a big question. And then going into what are some of the things that we're going to experience along the way in terms of growing our business. And that's what really today is focused on. Webinar part number 2 on Wednesday was all about the actual launch. So we kind of stepped through the technical items, getting a domain, a CMS, our newsletter provider, reader revenue providers. So really trying to demystify and defog that and make some really strong recommendations on the different platforms you should go with. And today is all about the growing phase. So now you are a business owner. You're no longer just a journalist. You kind of inherit this new set of responsibilities. And we want to discuss some of the things that you kind of have to do as you grow. And a lot of our panelists today, they have a lot of insight on hiring and the different things that we're going to be doing apart from just the journalism side. So just to prep our panelists, who we'll introduce in a second, we had a lot of questions after parts 1 and 2, specifically on the hiring piece. So how do I find the right people? Especially, of course, we've always heard this question, how do I find a good salesperson? That's always, probably the #1 question that we get, but we'll also be discussing other areas of hiring. And then really, how do I build my audience, build traffic? We had somebody that reached out and said, hey, I think I've done a pretty good job organically, but I've kind of hit a plateau. How do I scale beyond that? So we'll probably be leaning on you guys for some answers to some of those questions. Some quick announcements before we get started. Broad Street, we're launching the Intersection. It's kind of a virtual group, very similar, if not almost the same as our Broad Street community group on Facebook. So if you search on Facebook for Broad Street Community, you're going to find a group with about 600 or 700 members. All publishers doing this, so kind of your peers in this endeavor. And the Intersection is an attempt to really kind of, although we are focusing primarily on hyperlocal, really any publisher with a direct sales team. It's a group of peers for anybody who's in this, has to build their business, has direct sales, and really wants to bounce questions off other people. The Broad Street Community Group on Facebook has been awesome for that, but then we kind of want to expand it a little beyond Facebook and then maybe also do a little bit of a virtual conference at the end of the year. So if you are interested in that, you can search for Broad Street Community on Facebook, or you can visit that link, Tiffany, if you'd like to drop that in the go.broadstreetads.com link into the chat. That'd be awesome. So as we're going through this, we have our panelists who can chime in at any point with their insight. If you have questions as an attendee, you're listening in and you want to drop a question into the chat, every now and then we'll take a look at that and see if there's anything we can address right then and there. Otherwise, we'll come back to it at the end of the webinar. One other item, Broad Street Solo. So Broad Street, we have our minimum pricing, but we've had a lot of publishers who are starting up. You don't always have the budget that you need to really get up and running with all the software like Broad Street, which has like kind of an initial investment that you have to make. So what we've tried to do is really tailor an entry-level tier for Broad Street. If you're interested, it's $99 a month for the first year. There are some limits on the feature set and some things that we can do. We invest a lot of time in making sure you're set up for success with your site. So if you're interested in that, just email frontdesk@broadstreetads.com for more information. So to give everyone a quick background on Broad Street is an ad manager. It's the software that you use to upload the ads to your website, schedule them, collect analytics. We also really focus on the sales end. So what can we do to help you impress your advertisers or your prospective advertisers? We're launched in 2012 at the Block by Block conference, which we discussed a little bit. On webinar #1, we have Michelle McClellan on the call. We have a commitment to our customers' prosperity. We're always thinking about what we can do for them to help them be successful. And that comes in the way of customer support, some of our platform features, et cetera. Our client base is probably 70% local news, 10% city and regional magazines. And then we have a number of other publications that share the same model, meaning primarily direct sales. Most of our customers, the majority of their income is built on direct sales. So sponsored content, display advertising, newsletter sales, along those lines. So they all have that same model. So this content is very relevant for them. And 70% of our publishers are online only. We do have some publishers who are print-based and making that transition to digital. So our webinar segments, part one was all about planning. It's really about taking that step back, planning. If you do that, you put some, you don't let your excitement get ahead of you in terms of launching this. You do a little planning, think about what it is that you want to achieve. What is that vision that you're kind of going after? That was all in part one. Part two is all about launching. So primarily technical, getting your website up and running. And part three is about growing. So really going to be focused on the business aspect of it today. So here's our agenda. The first thing we're going to do is introduce our panel. We're going to discuss our new role as business people. So previously, in most cases, we're journalists. Some people have an ad sales background. When you kind of step into the role of a business owner, we need to recognize that there are new skills that we need to take on. There's a lot we don't know, and learning from our peers and other resources is really important. We're going to talk about time management. So a lot of you might be like, I know how to manage my day. We're going to talk about a way to really effectively manage your day and prioritize the things that you can do, and then start to look at some of the things that you might be able to delegate to someone else in your team. Quarterly and yearly goals. So we kind of have this big number, the amount of money that we need to make, or our goal at the end of the year. Want to break that down a little bit. We'll show that. And then talk about our first hires, because it's really helpful when we can delegate some of those more mundane tasks. And Denise had some really good feedback in her responses to some kind of preliminary questions that we had for the panelists before the webinar on delegating those mundane tasks and saving time for you to do the things that where you're either most effective or the areas of the business that you really need to focus on. Then we're also going to talk about systematizing your business, basically putting processes in place. I'll discuss how we do that at Broad Street and some of the real benefits to that. Talk about some recommended reading as well. So there's some great books, some great resources that I emphatically recommend that you take a look at, because alongside learning from your peers, learning from other business owners who've been there where you want to go is really important. And then we'll dive into questions for our panelists. So getting to our panelists. First, we have Scott Broadbeck out of Arlington, Virginia. Scott is the owner of Local News Now, which publishes 4 local news websites in Northern Virginia, including ARL Now in Arlington. He's a former board member of Lion Publish as well, so thank you for joining us, Scott. We also have Denise Civiletti over in Riverhead, New York. It's at the end of Long Island. So Denise is a veteran local reporter and editor, prior to founding Riverhead Local with her husband in 2010. She was the executive editor and co-publisher of a 4-paper group of weeklies on the east end of Long Island. Her work has been recognized with numerous awards, including most recently Investigative Reporting and Writer of the Year awards from the New York Press Association. Thank you for joining us, Denise. We have Kelly Gilfillan out of Brentwood, Tennessee. Kelly is a news entrepreneur who grew Homepage Media Group for 10 years, successfully scaling to 8 news sites throughout Middle Tennessee. Her company sold to FW Publishing in 2018, and Gilfillan still serves as publisher over the daily online news sites. Gilfillan has a passion for mentoring and coaching local news organizations, and she serves as the chair of Lion Publishers, a national nonprofit organization that serves independent online news publications. So we do, and in every webinar, we really called out Lion Publishers. Speaking of that peer group that you could join, find people like you who are in this business. Lionpublishers.com is a sort of trade association of people doing this, and they focus on the education piece, bringing people together and helping you being successful. So lionpublishers.com if you haven't already checked it out. We have Howard Owens from Batavia, New York. Howard Owens started in online news publishing in 1995 when he launched East County Online in San Diego. He's been an executive with Scripps and Gatehouse, and he launched the Batavian in 2008. And then I think joining us a little later, he's out covering a big story right now, John Ward from Red Bank, New Jersey, John has over 3 decades in the news business and has worked as a reporter at Home News in his hometown of New Brunswick, New Jersey, the Asbury Park Press and the Star Ledger, which are media outlets in the New Jersey area, and also as a freelance magazine writer. He serves as the publisher, editor, and sole reporter for Red Bank Green, covering the town of Red Bank, New Jersey. So I always say this, thank you panelists for taking the time out of your day. I know that as business owners, it's not like our days aren't completely filled up to begin with. We've always have things going on. So there's real value in having you here. And I think we probably all understand the value of putting together a very cohesive webinar series for anybody looking to launch a hyperlocal. So we are recording this, and we will be posting these videos online in the next month. We're going to have them trimmed, edited, put on our website. So you will be able to come back and visit this. It's just going to take us about a month to get up and running. So let's jump right in. Let's talk about your new role. Congratulations, you have been promoted. So you are now a business owner, and your past skills in journalism, and this goes for really any specialist, anybody. You could be a developer who launches a business, which is similar to Broadsheet's story. You could be a chef who's looking to launch his own restaurant. Your past skills will absolutely help you, but they also have a tendency to hold you back, especially if you really want to focus on that thing that you really love doing, but you don't focus on the business side. So we have to recognize that there are other areas of the business like cash flow that end up becoming major priorities. So we had Glenn Birkins on the first call and a few other panelists throughout the first 2 parts of the webinar that really emphasized how important it is to focus on revenue and get yourself to a point where you're sustaining the business. You'll probably want to learn to sell your product before you hire someone else to do it. I know a lot of us have this inclination to say, okay, I don't want to do the sales piece. I really just want to hire someone to do that. You are probably going to be your best salesperson initially, and you will probably eventually want to delegate that part of your business. But it's a good idea to learn the areas of the business where you might not be initially comfortable, so you at least know how that's supposed to be done. And you have to also recognize that it's really all on you, right? You have all this, you're the person who's accountable. There are lots of wins and losses along the way, probably a lot more losses than there are wins. And that's just the name of the game. As business owners, we try things out, we experiment, we reach out to potential advertisers. Sometimes they say no. In fact, more often than not, they'll probably say no, but we're going to get wins too. And some of those people that said no in the past, they're going to say yes in the future. So in the end, we're going to be more defined by our successes and just have to recognize that temporary setbacks, they absolutely take place. So losses, of course, are an opportunity to learn and fix something. That's something most of you probably already know, but it really is, if something doesn't go as planned, you think about what can I do a little bit later to fix that. And something else to really think about is that spending and managing money will become essential. So you might end up taking a different perspective on spending and managing money. So you will want to develop a simple monthly budget that covers your monthly line items, the things that you have to pay for while you're launching, but you're also going to be maintaining an ROI-oriented approach to spending. So sometimes paying for a new staffer, it seems like it's expensive, but you're going to be able to offload a lot of your big responsibilities to them, especially some of the more like mundane tasks, things like bookkeeping or things like collecting invoices, all of that. And Denise had some really good insight there. You'll want to think about, where am I saving time? Because time is really your most fundamentally capped resource. Initially, we don't always have the money that we want to get started, but your time, the amount of hours you have in a week, there's a fundamental limit there. And we need to guard our time and make sure that we're spending it in the right places. And of course, finding the right people who have been where you want to go, which is something that Kelly brought up. That's really important too. So when we're looking to hire someone to help us out on our journey, finding the right people who have been there before can be incredibly helpful. So throughout this process, we're always learning. We're learning from our peers, right? People who have skin in the game and have done it before. So our Lion publishers, all of the publishers at Lion, that's where I got to know a lot of the publishers, and I saw what an awesome resource and community that is. So again, lionpublishers.com, learning from your peers and people who have done it before. You can bounce ideas off them, get over hurdles that they have gotten over before. So really enough can't be said for the power of talking to people who have been in this. And then of course your friends in the industry, other people in your area that maybe not be members of Lion, but also have great insight from books, physical and audiobooks. I'm a big fan of audiobooks. Sometimes, again, you can get some really concentrated quality advice from someone who has been there before you. And then of course, the best teacher in doing any of this is the experience, getting out and trying to sell your first ads, your first conversations with advertisers. You're going to learn an immense amount in that process. And you really want to get out of your comfort zone as much as you can. I know that anybody, if you're coming from that journalism background, that's what you love to do. And kind of going back to that previous slide, it's the thing that can hold us back sometimes, because that's what we want to do. And maybe we want to do that as opposed to allocating time to sales or something that we really need to do. We really need to step out of the comfort zone and do the things that we may be uncomfortable doing, because that's where we're going to get the most value and education. And of course, from screwing up, you will along the way. Everyone does. No business owner makes it in the end without, kind of their pitfalls along the way. So one more thing, it may take a while before you feel like you've really hit your stride. Running a business is a completely different skill set. So it takes a while for us to get the hang of it. I know personally, it took me a few years before I felt like I really had a good grip on how this all comes together. You were once a specialist. You were once that chef, right, working in the back of the restaurant, but now you're more of a generalist. Now you own the restaurant and you have to take on a different set of responsibilities. So let's talk about time management. In order to grow the business, you really need to make sure that your time is spent in the right places. This will eventually lead into that delegation and hiring piece. But this is the way, so just keep an open mind here, because you might say, I know how to manage my day. This isn't an issue for me. What I like to do before I do anything during the day, and I've worked with a lot of entrepreneurs who do this as well, every single day before they do anything, they create their daily to-do list. And we'll kind of go through an example of a to-do list that you might find really helpful. The way we go through this is really powerful in making sure we prioritize the right things. So the first thing on our to-do list, something I always like to do, is I write down 3 things going well, right? It's kind of like my gratitude line. Landed a new client. We got some really good feedback from a customer. It's a really nice day outside. What are some things that are going well? Just starting with some good news, because once we get in it, we've been running the business for a little while. There's always things popping up, trying to take time out of our day, and you can kind of get lost in the weeds and not really focus on what's going well, and just focus on the things that you have to do on a day-to-day basis. So I like to start by really thinking about that. And then we write the top to-dos that we can think of. And then we start to separate those tasks into what we call compounding value, right? So what are the tasks that we can do that are really going to push us forward, right? They're really going to push our page view growth, or our audience growth, or our reader revenue growth, or our advertising revenue growth. Those are the things where we should really focus, where there might be some more mundane tasks that take up a lot of our day that we probably shouldn't be spending our time on we shouldn't be spending our time on if there's someone that we can delegate that to. So then we're going to prioritize based on urgency and compound value. And then, like I said, when possible, delegate everything else. So I'm going to pop in to a different window here. And Tiffany, if you can link this document, what we did for this webinar series, we put together a hyperlocal launch checklist, and there are a few worksheets that follow. So if you haven't seen this document before, what you can do is you can actually log on or go to File over here, make a copy, and get your own copy of this checklist. This is from parts 1 and 2, our planning and launch phases. So we'll have our checklist for launching a hyperlocal, and then we talked about our 1-year goal worksheet. What is our vision for the new company, that North Star that we're really going after? How are we serving our readers, our customers, or our advertising clients? What is the amount of revenue that we need to make in order to make this a success? And then we broke that revenue down, and we'll talk about this in the goals piece, our yearly and quarterly goals, which is coming up next.